And it's interesting because reproductive performance is really critical on the success of a pig farm. And but we got a problem in the country here. Let's see if I go the right direction here. And before I get started, I want to give credit here to the co-authors. I'm the so-called lead author, I guess, on it. And then these others, Dr. Estienne at VPI has been on there, worked on it, Dr. Singleton, Dr. Baker, Dr. Fransky, Dr. Flowers, Dr. Knox, and Dr. Stalder, and Dr. Knauer. So this is a committee that we put together to work on reproductive problems. Because when we think about it, in this country, I better give credit to my sponsors here also. These are the companies that put some money and some pretty good dollars in this checkoff, especially for the funding of this program. It's not easy putting these together. It takes a lot of time and effort. But I was thinking about what's the reasons for developing this trouble guide? Why would we do that? So I've kind of put those together. And if we look at it, this is some of our main problem, I think. In the United States, the number of university extension people actually trained in reproductive physiology of pigs, there's myself. I used to work at the University of Nebraska. I'm now retired and have a consulting business. Then there's Dr. Singleton at Purdue. He's retired. And then we got Mark Estienne at VPI. And we got Rob Knox at the University of Illinois. These are the reproductive physiologists that we got in the United States. So you can see our problem. We don't have a lot of people putting things together to help the industry. So remember a few years ago, U.S. Pork Center and Excellence said that they had this swine nutrition guide and how great it was. And I thought, yeah, that is good. It's a national program. And I told Meisinger at that time, I said, your problem is, that's a good program, but what we really need is one reproductive physiologist to put something together. There's very few of us here. And then the other thing you'll find, the university have just about totally eliminated on-farm visits because of funding and things like that. So nobody actually going on the farms from the university side and trying to solve reproductive problems. So I thought, well, this would be a good time to put these together. And so that's what we've done. Now, my objective was to get all the questions and answers available, publications and references, into one location. You know, you can get on the web now, or you can go all over the place, but you've got to put them together. So I thought, well, let's try to get them in one location. So that's what we tried to do. Actually, at this point, we're not totally done, but we got over, there was 1,026 questions we put together so far and got answers. So that's what I'm trying to do. So the other thing is on the computer, my philosophy is, for sure, is the computer format and the preparation of the information. You know, you got to keep everything as simple as possible. You know, the university, maybe we step on the internet and we surf around and spend a lot of time searching for stuff. Pork producers don't have the time. You got to get in and get out and get to going. So that's what my approach has been, to make it really simple, make the computer program highly user-friendly, and as simple as possible, and no fancy animation, all that stuff, because all that stuff takes a lot of what? Memory. And you get on some of these farms out in the middle of Nebraska, they don't hardly have internet access, and then the internet don't work very good. So you don't want it highly complicated. You want it simple. And make the appearance of the information as simple. Just they know what the answer is going to be. They don't have to guess and wonder what's being said. Answer the question in simple terms, and then we provide documentation. Now, some people, well, I don't need documentation, but this is, we put that together for a broad-based opinion that the consultants maybe on your farm might want to have extra information before they go out there. They might want to say, well, I better get briefed up on this. So there's some information here for those people also. And then we can search the documents for specific items. You'll find that the book I put together is pretty thick. It's about like that. So we put the electronic thing, but you want to search for boar fertility or something. Just type that in and go find some answers, okay? And have the information readily available to all pork producers and allied industries. Because a lot of the information you get comes from allied industries on your farm, or you want someone to help you interpret what it says. So we hired a programmer. We're about 3 weeks behind, I think. I arrived yesterday, and I hadn't seen things totally. And they said, well, they didn't know they had it all ready together. So this is hot off the press. I worked till 12:30 last night putting this slide set together, so don't put your hand on it. It'll probably burn you. So I just said, well, we got to show you what we've got. And so what this is you go on to screen 1. You'll see this. Select a category for investigating a problem with reproductive efficiency. So we thought, what are those? The main thing we're going to talk about, you think about, well, there are reproductive problems on your gilts. There's reproductive problems on your sows. And now we hardly ever hand-mate boars or any sows. We all AI. So we've broken that down and said, well, it's probably semen quality we're talking about now. Very few farms hand-mate sows. So that's the way we've organized it. So you go in and you say, okay, I got a problem with gilts. So what is our problem? So you say, well, okay, there's a problem with puberty attainment and expression of estrus. Yeah, that may be a problem. It may not be my problem. Because I've set this up because if you try to answer the question which I initially thought you'd lead you through every one, you might have 500 of them. Then you'd be like me, delete. There's too much time and effort here. So I went back and looked at it. I said, well, let's just put it in problems, okay? I don't have that problem on my farm. My problem maybe is the gilt pool is too small. I don't have enough gilts to breed. What's the problem there? And then what's the maybe they got a low litter size, or maybe they got a low farrowing rate. So you don't have to look at all of those. You can say, I'll just select what I want. So you come in, you say, oh, the thing we might say is that you got the problem with the gilts. The reproductive problem, the puberty attainment estrus expression, that's one of the big ones. And a lot of this is based on my history of about 30 years working in the pork industry. I've been on thousands of farms, and this is what I see. Okay, we got a problem with puberty. Can't get them bred. Can't get them cycle. They won't express estrus. So then we go in and say, what else you need to do? That's the problem we're working with. So you go in, you say, well, there's a line here that says, workers need training in proper procedures for effectively detecting estrus in gilts. Now, the way this program works, we have a blue box, what they call a blue box. You can click that blue box, and that takes you to a publication that talks in really good detail about estrus detection of gilts. If they can't figure out how to detect this heat detection, they probably aren't going to go any farther than that. You've got to get yourself up to knowing something about heat checking. So they do that. So they go hit the blue box. And they go say, oh, here's the publication, comes right up. And then read that, and you say, okay, got that under control. And then there's a button that'll take you right back to this one. Then, so gilts fail to exhibit estrus. First estrus will exhibit estrus that is delayed. And this is so big that I can't show you all of it. So what I've done, I said, okay, in that particular question right there, we have 33 questions that'll help you figure out is your problem here. Okay? So it'd take a long time if we tried to show you all 33. So the next one was, they said, okay, maybe the gilts exhibit first estrus but stop cycling after one or more. You see that quite a bit. Well, I got them cycling, and then I didn't breed them that time, and then they quit. So you look at that, we've thought through that. There's 25 questions in there you're going to have to answer, or at least think about. Is that the problem on my farm? And then a high percentage of gilts, maybe 30 or 40% of them, do not exhibit first estrus after you've treated them. So you might go up and give them PG600 to get them cycled, but then they don't carry on. Why? I treated them. They should be cycling. So we go through that one, and then you'll find there's 19 questions in there that deals with that particular aspect. Now you can go to the next level, because see, remember I talked about the other one? You go in and you say you hit that first button, problem with puberty attainment, expression of estrus. I think that's what I want to look at on this farm. So you go in, and then you'll say, okay, gilts exhibit first estrus in response to PG600, but then they stop, and after one or more cycles, they quit. Why do they do that? So then there's 25 questions there that you'll be related to that topic. Then gilts exhibit first estrus, but then they exhibit an abnormal cycle. The first one seems to be fine. But from then on, we can't predict when they're going to cycle. They're random. Something happened. So why? Why are they doing that? So then you go in and you say, okay, there's probably 25 questions related to that. And you get to thinking about this, there's a lot of stuff that goes on a pig farm in there. But you think, well, that's a simple little problem, we'll go solve that. And then you get into it and think, man, there's a lot of things involved that could be happening here. And then there's the poor synchrony of the first estrus among the gilts. I get that all the time. Well, I'm out here trying to breed a group of gilts, and I only got 10. I need 20, and I got 40. What the heck's the problem here? How come I don't have my numbers right? So we got that one there, and that gives you, there's 22 questions you got to deal with on that. Gilts exhibit a weak sign of heat, first estrus. Then they stop briefly for a back pressure test, and then they run off. And those are really aggravating, aren't they? I call them darters. You go in and you push them, and they dart off, and then look at that. Oh, I'm not standing. You go, and then their ears will flop up, you hit them again, and they run off a mile. What do they do with that? Why do they do that? All right? It's a common problem. So we got about 15 questions on that. Now, I think if you'd click on this one here, is there poor synchrony? That might be the next one I pulled up, yeah. So now you go down, now we're getting down to the questions. So that's going to give you the answers. So this is there's poor synchrony of first estrus among those gilts. Now, what's going to go happening there? What's happening there? So I've looked at this, and you think, okay, well, we're dealing with housing and environment on some of this. Maybe it's a housing problem, or it's just the environment they're living in that's the problem. So then you go and you get a question. Is there a large variation in age and degree of sexual maturation among those potential replacement gilts? Yeah, maybe, or maybe I don't know. Maybe I better do it. Maybe I better go find out about it. So that's what that means. That if you click this, it'll take you right to the answer. Okay? Then it gives you what the set is, and then you say, okay, maybe I need to go back, and there's a button that's going to take you right back to here. And say, okay, the next one is, are gilts at an appropriate age and body size to continue expressing its cycles after that first estrus? So you click that button, take you to the answer. This one then, were gilts exposed to boars prior to entering the breeding barn? Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. If they are, they can cause you a lot of problem when you're trying to get them over here to breed them. Okay, they may have cycled and you missed them. Okay, and then are gilts relocated and transported from the rearing facility to a new location, such as the breeding barn? If you don't watch them, you know, you can load them on a truck and haul from this farm to this farm, and they all cycle the next week. Now, you think they're going to be randomly distributed because you need a few this week and a few the next week, but they're all cycling this week because that transport triggered them all. Okay, so he talks about that. Okay, then were gilts mixed with contemporary gilts from other pens within 2 weeks before expected a natural attainment. And you'll say right there, that's our problem usually. You have no idea what your normal average puberty is on your farm, do you? You may have to learn, because you may have to know what that value is, because we know if they cycle at this time, if we can back it up 2 weeks, we'll get a much better response right back here. If we know something about your age of puberty. We may be too early, and we may be way too late, and then you got a lot of old gilts in your herd. Okay? So we got those in there. Then, of course, the actual body size and all that gets to be involved. Were gilts exposed to boars prior to enter that breeding barn? We talked that one. Gilts located. Okay, you got to get those. Now, where the gilts can mixed up within your own pens on the farms, and then where gilts exposed to this one in the high ambient temperatures. 85 we put there. So my position was, when I worked with these guys, we may not have the exact answer for that. That might say that might be 80. But my point was, you got to have something there to stimulate you to say, I better go look. If I just said, they've been heat stressed, what are you going to tell me? Well, what do you mean heat stressed? So I tried to clarify every question. Said, that's the thing. It may not be the actual one. It might be different. And so were methods used to cool gilts when ambient temperatures were above them? Yeah, sure, I do. I put water on them. Well, how do you do it? I go on some farms. I took water on them. What they do? I got a hose, a fountain with a handle. You rip it up and it stays on all day. Now, how does an animal cool itself? It's got to get wet and then dry. Air coming across it dries it. And you'd be surprised what you see. It runs all day. Now, can you imagine your water bill? Oh, that's pretty high, but I see it. Okay? So those kind of things we talked about. So this, the next one is you think, okay, we've talked about the housing, but maybe boar exposure itself might be the thing you need to concentrate on. So our gilts at appropriate age when you start boar exposure. And a lot of times when we're on a lot of farms, we're 160 to 180 days, 165. They need to be weighing about 240 to 260. When I go on farm and they tell them, your gilts are too small. I said, well, get them a little bigger and see what happens. They get bigger and say, well, they cycle a lot better. But the problem is what? Well, now I got older gilts. They pugged it up for a while because I had to get more growth on them. So it gets you thinking, maybe I need to rethink the whole program. Okay, then you go ahead and you say, do all boars exhibit good libido and stimulating gilts, such as chant, chomp, salivate, and mount? They'll say, well, they act more like barrows than boars to me. Well, those kind of boars are not good heat check boars, or they don't do any good stimulating gilts. And he said, well, I can't do anything about the management. Well, go talk to the manager. But you're at least aware, hey, we need better boars in here, because sometimes the people may think I'm crazy, but when I've gone in some of these facilities, I think, I don't even smell these boars. I'll get on my hands and knees down in front of the crate with them, see if I can smell them, and you can't even smell them. They don't have any activity. So what do you expect them to do for those gilts that you got out there? Nothing. Okay, so we just bring those points up to you. Okay, now, do some of these gilts appear to be intimidated by the size of the boar? You say, now they're the same age. The Dr. Singleton gave us a slide that he couldn't show everything, but it's a great example of that. You got this huge boar standing there about that tall, and you got all these gilts running in there, and they're about like that. Now, that would, maybe it might intimidate you. You might think about it. Well, we got pictures just to kind of remind you, because some people are visual, some of them like to read. Most people like to just look at it, and then they'll remember it. Okay? And then also, do gilts receive continuous boar contact 24 hours a day? They need a lot of boar exposure to get them to cycle. Okay? That can be a real problem, too. So then we continue on with some more. We won't go into great detail on these, but it's just how much boar exposure they get. Days, time, minutes. You might look at it and say, yeah, nothing applies there to me. I'm going to mess with none of them. So you got to get this one. Do gilts receive a few minutes of fence line exposure 7 days a week? Maybe, maybe not. So how much fence line exposure are they going to get? So you got these kind of questions. And then are all boars used for sexual stimulation sexually mature and at least 11 months old? Well, that's a problem, isn't it? Especially on a new unit, repop unit. You bring in new gilts, you bring young boars. And young boars are not very good heat check boars because they're not old enough. There's pheromones, which we talked to you about in there. It takes till they're about 11 to 12 months of age to get the pheromone contact up to that saliva that'll stimulate them to cycle. So if you go in there and you populate it, and I was on a 5,000 fowl farm, I was 10,000, they had all kinds of trouble. And the whole problem was with those boars were too young. So what you have to do is what? You have to figure out, if I'm going to bring these gilts in, I got to get somebody here maybe to help them develop boars or some way to keep them in the same health status when I bring them in. But you say, I want older boars in here. Okay? Now, are the gilts exposed to several different mature boars when sexually stimulating gilts to cycle? And I just highlighted that one because then this one will get you to an answer. So if you hit on that, it says, okay, are gilts exposed to these several different mature boars stimulated? So it just goes through and it says, okay, it's likely that the efficiency of boar expected stimulating gilts to begin estrus cycle is enhanced if gilts are exposed to several different mature boars rather than a single one. Well, I only got one boar. Maybe you need more than one boar. And you say, well, if you put boars together, what do they do? They're going to fight, aren't they? Well, maybe you need to figure out you're going to have to raise them together, but you can also train them. We've got some boars easily trained. You put them in two stalls. They know each other all the time. We get them trained to a girth tether. You bring them up and you want them out. What are they going to do? You got them in a stall. What are they going to do? They'll come right out of here one step and they wait. And you put the tether on him. He walks out and he knows his buddy's coming out too, so he just stops there. And the other one comes stepping out. So I'm going to get a run today. You tether him, and away they go. And they work together right down through there. Pigs are very smart, and you can train them. Okay? So we just try to show you those things that, when you think about that, it might work on your farm. Okay? And then also we come in and say, Well, you need more boar exposure, not just one. So I've got this publication put together for U.S. Pork Center of Excellence, and it's called the BEAR. It's boar exposure area, so they call it the BEAR. It's really modeled out my system 20 years ago. So I put that together for the National Pork Board. Or no, it's U.S. Pork Center of Excellence. So what is it? What you say? What is a BEAR? You know what a grizzly bear looks like, but that's not what we're talking about. So what we've done now is I'll try to show you what it is. Here's what a BEAR is. It's a pen specifically designed to heat check. So you bring your gilts and sows in here. Now, I've still got people bring sows down. But the gilt, you bring them in here. You can put some in here. You got boars lined up here, and you got gilts over here. You can work both of them. You got a place a person can walk right through there. We're a believer they need to have scales to weigh some of these. So no, because there's a difference in growth rate and that kind of thing on puberty attainment. So if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. So you put scales in. And then if they start cycling, you can slip some of them in here, you can slip them out. So that's what a BEAR is. Well, then you say, well, hey, I need more than one. Is there any evidence for that? Do some sows like some boar better than others? You ever seen any pictures of it? So I want to keep it in your mind that they do. So here's a BEAR. I got the boars in here. You can see them chomping the saliva all over here, and they got nipples here. And these boars can actually go either direction, so you got to watch how you water them and how they're headed. But look at this. This is a nice one here. Everybody likes him. What about these? Well, I feel bad. Nobody cares about me. Right? That just showed you, hey, there is something here. They like some boars better than others. And usually they are older and they smell. All right? But what happens then, if you watch, these older boars will start getting these younger ones excited. They will, I better start chomping them, making sure he knows I'm a boar. And then he starts getting beef developed. Okay? So there's just these things you work through. Okay, then we go to the next one. We're back here to this first one because you hit a button that takes you back and say, well, I got the gilt thing solved. Well, I could have some problem with sows. Yeah, maybe we better go take a look. And so then you go over here and you say, okay, we come up with our list. Problem with sows. Sow longevity is maybe too low due to high replacement rate, culling rate, or lameness. So if you don't get them started right as young, you're going to have problems down the road, aren't you? Because I've always used to tell people I go out on their farm and say, did you ever look over this fence here and leave all these gilts running around here and say, there is my future? Because it is. If you don't get them gilts in there, you're out of the business, right? So gilts are important, but maybe you don't have a good longevity. What's the problems with that? Then the other one is sows they might have a low farrowing rate. They might have a low number of piglets born per litter. Maybe they got a long wean to service interval. Or maybe the pre-weaning mortality is high. I get about, how many pigs are we getting born now on some of these farms? Boy, we used to say, man, I got 10 pigs born alive. What do we get now? We got some data to show you. There's 17 of them could be. And what are you going to do with them all? They're going to die if you don't do something. But, so we go talk about that. So I just picked this one off. Because Carl said he's going to keep right after me on time here.
You're in good shape.
So, pre-weaning mortality is high. Weaning to service interval, there's a lot of things to be involved in that. So let's take a look here. Pre-weaning mortality is high. So I thought through that and said, okay, where should we focus to start with? And so I said, okay, piglet mortality is high during farrowing and the first 24 hours after birth. Now, that's where most of it is, right? That's typical. Well, if you go in and look what we've put together then, it ends up there's 102 questions in there that could be involved with why those pigs are dying. You ever think about it? How many things are going to be involved? Well, yeah, they're dead. Well, she laid on them. I guess that's it. Why did she do that? Can you save them? What's that extra pig worth on your farm? Quite a bit. It's a lot. Now, so you think, well, no, I guess, well, I got 14 pigs born alive. No, I got 15 of them born alive. What am I going to do with that other one? Well, I've even got a bigger problem probably, because that sow, when I brought her in the house there, I recorded how many nipples were functioning on her based on that previous lactation. Looks like she can only nurse 12. So that's the other thing we go through. How do you plan to bring those sows in? What do you need to do in that farrowing house? You got to count them nipples, because she's farrowing. You don't want to be running around to, oh my gosh, I forgot to do that. Get it ahead of time, which we go through that on pre-care. Okay. So piglet mortalities, 102 questions made in there in this first 24 hours. Then piglet mortality is high during days 2 to 3. We get them born alive. We do a good job on day 1, keep them going, but on day 2 and 3 they get knocked off. So then we got 50 questions to answer those. Is piglet mortality high during or after day 3? 3 days to weaning. That's an easier one to handle. And so there's about 35 questions of those. So piglet mortality is high during that first farrowing and first 24, or day of farrowing in the first 24 hours. So I've kind of focused on that one. So we break that out. You say, well, that's easy to answer. But it's not. Because what you think about, that's why I thought, okay, what do I do on the farm when I'm troubleshooting the farm? Well, because everybody says, well, they're dying in the farrowing house. I'll tell you what, there's some farms you'll work with. The problem is the sow care prior to farrowing wasn't right. You've overfed them too much. Okay, they get bigger. Bigger, heavier sows do what? Just flop on the ground there and smash them. Okay, so we go through that. There's about 6 questions just getting you a little bit primed on maybe you need to think about before you got them in the farrowing house. Then day 1 pig care. That's where your money's made. What do you need to do on day 1 to keep those pigs alive? There's 19 questions in there. There's a lot of things you can do. You got to plan ahead and get that day 1 right to keep those pigs alive. And then you go to stillborns. How many of those you got? Well, there's a few. So we got 18 questions that deal with stillborn piglets. Is there something there you could do with that? How about crashing and lying on piglets? Well, that's probably the biggest one. Is, well, geez, they go out there and they're dead. They got laid on. They look smashed. So they got 28 questions on that one. And then 5, litter size, birth weight, and birth order. We know that is a problem. So there's a few questions there. Just bringing up maybe what those values ought to be. Just to give you an idea where you might want to look. But there's not a lot of them. And down here, mammary glands and piglet behavior. How many of you go out there and evaluate the mammary glands of the sows before you bring them in? Or their previous lactation? How many of you guys ever thought when you bring a group of sows in, how many functional nipples in there your sows can handle? All of them. How many can you handle? Don't do it, do you? But you can usually do it. Just count them when they come in. Put them on the farrowing card. This is what we got. This is what we can handle. If the sow starts farrowing and she's already loaded up based on that card and she got some more pigs to go here, you're going to start moving pigs. Okay? So just try to remind you, get ready. And the mammary glands are important. And then savaging of pigs. You don't see a lot of that, but sometimes that's usually in a younger one. Younger sow's first litter. You'll see, man, we got 11 questions for that one. So this is just an example of our firstborn pig is marked and removed after stomach is full. Within 2 hours. Well, I don't do that. A lot of you don't do that. But the farms that we work with that have the highest production do that. Takes time and effort. So I'm not going to read through all that, but the important thing is colostrum. They got to get colostrum. And you say, well, they do, but how much? So you go through, and we go through that. And so then it says, as such, the quality of colostrum decreases as milk is nursed. How many of you thought about that? You know, I got the pig here, and the first one born runs over, and man, he gets a lot of colostrum, doesn't he? Does he get the highest quality colostrum? Sure does. I got a graph to show you. Well, what about the last one? Well, there's not a lot left of him because the rest of them took it. All right? A pig's what? He's pretty much what we call a piglet, right? They take care of themselves. They don't care about their next buddy. It's me. So then you say, okay, that could be a problem. Maybe we need to think about that on the farm. And then we got some pictures here. Now, what advantage is that? How do I do that? Make it simple and easy. I don't like to implement programs on farms that's going to take you a lot of labor. It's got to be done easy and quick. So, what I did, I said, okay, if I can convince you, this is the colostrum concentration of IgG, which is the antibody, at farrowing time. So it just shows you, hours after onset of farrowing, from 0 to 24. At 0 time, when the first pig was born, this is the IgG content that's in that. Look at that. Those little rascals get up here, right up here. And they're going to get as much as they can. Well, then if these others are later, here, the colostrum content's going down in 3 hours. So you got to kind of manage that so the one pig don't get all the colostrum. And so they all kind of spread it out. Then you say, well, I'll transfer those pigs in a couple of days, maybe a day. And he didn't really get much off its mother. Well, look what he's going to get when he gets over there on that other sow. Not going to get a lot, is he? Antibodies are gone. Then he might come back and say, well, how do I need to handle this cross-fostering situation? Okay? So here it just gives you pictures. These pigs, they're being farrowed over here. Look at them little full bellies on them little rascals. Well, they don't need to be out here taking it from these. So you just design a little thing here. And sometimes we used to just use boxes with just L shapes that we just put them in. And you put them in there, and they'll just stand in here. Then you put a heat lamp over them. And then after time, you just keep adding to it. And then you get them out here, and then you get them done, put them all back. And there's various ways you can do that. That's just one way. The point I wanted to make is, here's the easy way to do it. Here it is. Here's your heat lamp. Put them in there. Not hard to do. And then also you need to select a category here. There's another one here. What might be affected then is going to be SEMA. And we debated about that to start with. Well, do we call it boar fertility or what is it? And now you think, well, now most of the sows are all artificial insemination. It's probably semen, not just the boar. And then you think, well, so I'm working with farms now, and believe it or not, we're back collecting boars on their own farms. So then, well, that's different too. So we did then decide, well, we need to have something here on just semen quality, but it's going to have to be applied to the sow farms, and maybe you're collecting boars in your own farm. And we kind of left the boar stud as kind of a separate item. So we select it. Now, we get into this one. So they select this area concerning semen quality. And then I think Dr. Singleton or Dr. Canal or somebody said, well, we need to analyze the data first. Yep. I think that's a good idea. And essentially what it said, well, analyze the data. My question was, well, how do I do it? I don't have any idea how to do it. All right? So my position is we have to have a blue box, and that's the thing that just takes you out and says, if you want to analyze your data, here's how to do it. Simple way. Not a highly sophisticated system. And so a lot of times on some of these computer programs we have, like Excel, they'll analyze some data for you in a simple way. Just show you how. And that's what we're trying to do here. We don't have that box done yet, but that's going to be developed. So then you get into it, okay, you got the semen, or you need to look at the receiving, storing, and handling a commercial semen or an off-site boar stud that's taking it to the sow farm. So we got 37 questions there related to semen. Collecting, processing, storing, and handling of semen on the sow farm. We got to get it somewhat close to the sow farm, then we got to get it in the sow farm in a biologically secure manner. And so we go through the biosecurity, try to get the semen in the farm. And then how are you going to handle it on the farm? And you think, oh, that's simple. Put her in a semen cooler and shut the door. The problem is, on the farm I was in Ohio, and nothing against Ohio, excuse me, but I was in Ohio. And I went on the farm, and first thing I saw, I go to the semen cooler. You know what the problem was? It didn't shut very good, and it was a little bit slanted forward, and the door was open. I said, how long that been? Well, I don't know. Put it in there yesterday. I said, why don't you fix it? Never thought about it. You know what the problem was? How it's easy to fix? Because a lot won't seal. All it is, put a little board underneath and lifted it up so the darn thing like that, and the door stays shut. That's all it took. Now, but I've seen them try to use duct tape, and that gets used after a while, and then next thing you know, the door's swinging. But you ought to just think, well, yeah, I got a problem. So maybe I do on my farm. Maybe I need to just go back and just give it a brief overview. Is it working right or not? So, okay, that talks about the collection and processing on that sow farm. We got 51 of those. And then, here's an example with motility estimated at 0 to 100%. Now, that's important at a boar stud because it affects the number of doses you're going to have. So you might want to be sure you go to 5 or 10%. But if I'm on the sow farm, I already got it. Don't make a lot of difference. All I need to know is how motile does it have to be? All right? I don't care whether it's 85 or 88 or what. I just want it above a number. And that number is what? Usually 70%. Some data says if you're above 60, you're okay. So you make your decision. If it's above, that's okay. I don't worry about the 5 or 10. I just want to make sure I'm at least at this number right here. Now, you're going to evaluate it. Well, I don't know really how to evaluate that stuff. Make sure that it's right. All right? Because I hear people probably go to your farm and say, you shouldn't do it because you have no idea in the world what you're doing now. Just stay out of that. When they tell me that, I'm sure going to do it some way. Make sure I'm covered. Okay, so how do you do it? So, Dr. Singer put together a slide here. There's one on motility. There's some videos in there. And he's also put in a PowerPoint how you actually process SEMA and evaluate SEMA. So if we tell you to do it, my position is tell you how to do it. Don't just say go do it. Here's how you do it. And so you think about that. You say, well, okay, you told me to look at it, but I have no idea what it looks like. Now, if I can get this pointer thing, where do I go here? Do I have an IT guy? Can I click on that thing? Anybody know? I should be able to. Yeah, here we go. So you said, what does motility look like? Well, here's a video. Tell you, it kind of gives you somewhere to start. Man, them suckers are really going. So Dr. Singleton said that's 90%. I never checked it, but I expect he's right. Or the one and dead one or so. That's pretty close. Right? Yeah. So that tells you how to do it. So this one, are there indications of bacterial contamination? That's where, and some of that indication might be SEMA and agglutination is one visual thing. Because you look into that, and it looks like fuzzy balls. Just, oh, these sperm cells are all stuck together, and they look like fuzz balls moving around in there. Is that good? Nah, I don't think so. This could be contaminated. And so all these things can get involved. Because semen is not sterile. When you collect it, it's got bacteria in it, a lot of it. Most of it does. How much is bad? I don't know. There's some people say it's pretty bad, others say no. It varies from farm to farm. But if you got semen quality clumping and all that, you might need to take a look. So I've told them sometimes to look for bacteria. They'll tell me, I don't know what to look for. So we're going to tell you. We're going to show you what to look for. Now, the easiest way, if you don't know, and you don't want to really mess around with it, is what you do. You collect the boar, get some boar semen from somewhere. Said would probably send you some. And you tell them, don't put any antibiotics, nothing. Just send me a raw dose of that stuff before you do anything with it. Just send me a raw dose. Of course, when I collected our boars and stuff, I'd process it, and I said, well, I trained myself when I started doing this 40 years ago or more. I just did what? How'd you train yourself? You go out there and you collect the boar, and you put semen in there and don't do anything with it. You put it on the counter for about 3 days, and you open it up and sure don't put your nose over it because it could be green. It smells terrible. Well, you kind of, you put it on a microscope there, and you look at it, and you see all this stuff darting and running around in there and say, that's got to be bacteria. It sure isn't sperm cells. So what does it look like? How many of you have seen bacteria? Some of you? Any of you? Here's what it looks like. It's all these things just running through there. Look how fast those things are. Whew. That's bacteria. So you have no excuse telling me you don't know what it looks like. Now, what you'll do is you'll say, oh, yeah, that is bacteria in there. I'll just send that to the diagnostic lab, and they'll tell me what the problem is. And you know what they'll tell you? There was nothing in there of any significance. You say, wait a minute, the sperm cells are dying. What did they send you as a report? They sent you a report based on, is it detrimental to reproductive performance on diseases? They said nothing of any value. So you got to be careful how you read those reports. Because I've done that a few times. I said, don't believe them, because I looked at it before it went there. It is a problem on the farm. But it's not anything to do with like a PRRS or anything like that. It's not that kind of thing you're going to see. It's the bacteria. Now, what's the problem with that? You see, you think about this, is those bacteria are so high concentration, they're alive, and what are they doing? They're generating toxins. And what else are they doing? They're eating up all the nutrients, because what's the buffers? What the extenders got in them? Sugars, buffers. And what do these bacteria love? Sugars, buffers. What's the sperm cells love? Sugars and buffers. So they're competing against each other, and they just start growing, and they populate so fast, they kill the sperm cells or reduce their motility and affect them. All right? Now, so how do you get rid of that problem? Well, we put antibiotics in there, and that does do some good. They don't kill all of them. The one thing you have to first check on your farm that you can do is check the temperature of the SEMA cooler. If it gets up to close to above 18, 19 degrees, sometimes you can have a problem with bacteria. If you get to 20, I know you're going to get some problems. Okay? So there is things you can do on your farm. And the approach I'm taking in putting all this together is practical and applicable to the farm. But it does have some background for somebody else that may be going to be a consultant out there and say, maybe I better get up on this. At least that's what I do. If I know kind of an idea what I'm doing, I thought, I don't remember what goes on with that problem. Maybe I better go get the literature and take a look.